Welcome back to Takes on Talent. I am your host, Ozge, and today we've got something a little different, a little special, and honestly, something I've been looking forward to all year. This is Takes on Talent Best of 2025. Now, if you've been with us this year, you know we've had some incredible conversations. People who are rethinking the way we hire, the way we lead, and the way that we build teams that actually work. And look, in a year where HR has felt like equal parts strategy, psychology, and survival sport, these moments stood out. So today we're pulling together the clips that made us pause, rewind, and go, okay, that changes things. Segments about sourcing differently, leading differently, and understanding people at a deeper level, whether you're scaling a startup, transforming a global organization, or just trying to bring the right people into the right rooms. Don't worry, we're going to keep it fun. You'll get the insights, but you'll also get those, wait, did he really just say that? Moments that made the year. Well, this year. So settle in. This is the stuff that sticks with you, the stuff that shifts how you think about talent, about teams, about what makes people thrive at work. Let's jump into the best of 2025. We revisit one of the most electric conversations of the year. Russell Foltz-Smith from SmartRx and author mentor Amos Schwartzfarb, a genius product leader who's launched over 100 innovations, meets the mind behind Techstars Austin. This is where AI, purpose, and systems thinkings collide. And yes, that moment about developing hobbies to find purpose, still iconic.
The digitization of things doesn't matter at all. Your world is, like the universe is digitized at many different levels and you don't really care, right? I do think the thing you're grappling with is this idea of tangibility. Like, I want to know that I could be part of it too. That's what you mean by your, adjacency to the species. It's the human touch of sports. It's like, I want to know that I could be part of this too. Now, for things that you love about your life and humanity, that is, I think most people would agree that is true. They want that too. For things you don't like, you don't care about, you are happy to have completely digitized, alienated, like mechanized in all sorts of ways. People in LA embraced Waymo. Why? Because as much as we love car culture, none of us want to commute. So I no longer want to be called a driver. I want the cars to just drive. Okay? No, for some reason, humans, they rode horses for hundreds, thousands of years, and then the cars showed up, and then the horse population in the United States went from millions to like 300,000. And people weren't going, I wish I was a horse rider. They just wanted to get places. Now, there are some people that still love riding horses, training horses, even though there's no reason to do so, from a societal standpoint. Amos loves bikes. We've automated bikes so long ago, and yet he chooses as a human to ride them, to fix them, to where it's like, to me, this is where the future gets really fun and interesting with all of this complex computing, which is more of it becomes choice. Your choice of what you want to do.
Yes. Like I think about going back to the analogy of what you said, and that's exactly perfectly said. Let's think about a baseball team of robots, okay? One player throws the perfect pitch. One player has the robot has the perfect swing, hits a home run. It's 150 to 149, the end score. And I don't think anybody would watch that or want that. I don't think that's why, but at least why I watch sports or why the people around me watch sports is not to watch everybody hit the furthest home run and
There's also an assumption, let's be clear, because this is fun for people. There's an assumption that baseball is inherently perfectible. A perfect pitch is one that can be hit or one that can't be hit.
Fair.
It's the one that can't be hit, right? From the pitcher's viewpoint, a perfect pitch is one that's never hit.
I knew it as I said it, and I appreciate you bringing it up, but you get my point. If we were watching robots play and they didn't have, like, I don't know, the human aspect of it, I have a hard time thinking that would be a sport that people get as into. And maybe I'm wrong.
I maybe, but then my daughter was on a robotics team for a while, and what are one of the things that the robots do? They fight, and people got really psyched about watching robots fight.
But the people built them are the ones that win the prize, right? It's not that they're fighting; it's that the people built them got them to do it at that level.
I agree with your view on that. I think it's the robots in those scenarios are being used like guitars. They're instrumentations of somebody else's human strategy.
Now, one of our most watched episodes, Kevin Dooley, CHRO of Q2 Solutions. With a resume that spans Deutsche Bank, Colgate-Palmolive, and PepsiCo, Kevin breaks down leadership with rare global clarity. His substance versus style framework, still one of the most actionable ideas we've shared. What's your core hiring philosophy, either for your own teams or for the organizations that you advise?
I like to hire for intellectual curiosity. I think people who ask questions, you know, it's people can come prepared for interviews. They could look at the job description, but I want to hear what's on their mind. I want to learn about, how they think. I also look for people who take the initiative. So I think what you find a lot of times is, candidates, people are used to be told what to do. And I think most of my experience across multiple organizations is like the top performers are the ones who ask really good questions and they get started on things. So, I look at those two things with people. From a leadership perspective, I have a different rubric. I look at two things from a leadership perspective. One is I look at style. The other is I look at substance. Because usually with leaders, you have high style, low substance, high substance, low style. And you can, some of that's coachable, which is good. You see it because, you put people through programs, you do the coaching and so forth. It's harder with the substance because that's like, training, it's years of rigor, whatever it is. Style sometimes can be adjusted, but there's work that you have to put into it. So I think when you kind of look at leadership and you're assessing leaders, style and substance are two factors that you can look at continually, put people into like a 4-box grid.
I've done about 170 episodes of this podcast. I've been involved probably in 100,000 plus interviews or 15,000 hires. I don't hear that many original things. I've actually never heard that before with leadership assessment. Style and substance. I really like that. And it really resonates with me because you can have substance, but you'll have all different types of styles in terms of the way that you carry that out, right? If you think about football coaches who are like, defensive masterminds, right? You might have a Bill Belichick who leads a certain way, his style, right? Versus a Pete Carroll who leads a certain way with a different style, right? And so I really love that because that's a different way to look at them in the quadrants and kind of put them up against each other. Great stuff. Let's jump to Ozge Erturk, the CMO of Flow Sports and formerly of Amazon. Her journey from engineering to marketing leadership is anything but traditional, and her take on data-driven decision-making hit a nerve online. If you want a masterclass in challenging bias and scaling modern teams, this is the one. Looking at Amazon, looking at Match.com, both of those companies really interest me. What were some major lessons or takeaways from you that have informed who you are as an executive and as a leader going forward?
On the Amazon side, I'll just say it's a very humbling experience to be part of such a huge company. The type of problems that you deal with, it's guaranteed those problems have been tackled by someone smarter than you before. So the sense of looking for mental model, building those mental models, frameworks, being obsessed with that. So whatever solution you're coming up with can be repetitive, right? Like in the future for the problems to come. I think that's been the biggest learning, not just to solve for the moment, but solve for the long term. And know that there's always some kind of like documentation or solution that you might be looking for that might have happened from people coming ahead of you. I always will be also always grateful for the kind of like coaching that I've received with the leadership I had at Amazon. So really will be always grateful. On the Mesh.com side, really same thing I would say. As I, started working at Match, I had a fairly junior role, which then quickly grew into a director level role. And then I made the transition to the educational space. At the time, Match.com acquired the Princeton Review, which is a test prep company. So the old CEO of Match.com moved into leading the online education space for the IAC group. Mandy Ginsburg was her name at the time. And then kind of like her president slash chief product officer, Shar. And they've been amazing mentors for me. If anything, because of that transition, they really looked for growing the business on the online side of Princeton Review as quickly as possible because they knew the brick and mortar piece of Princeton Review was very um, complex and did not show a lot of growth opportunities. So they've seen the growth was going to be happening on the digital side of the business, which triggered them to kind of like move me from the math side to focus on the online education space. That gave me great amount of exposure, working directly with those amazing leaders who are now like holding really strong, powerful seats elsewhere. So I would say having direct access to that kind of leadership very early on at the director level at my career path was very invaluable and has taught me almost like in a crash course style, a lot of things. Because especially when you're coming from, performance marketing, these analytical spaces, you have a tendency to be super dialed into the details. It sometimes gets very challenging to take 5 steps back and look into the broader picture because you're into that day to day very, very closely. And they kind of like led me into that, growing into that next step of, okay, what's the bigger picture and how what I'm doing here is really translating into the broader business results. That was one thing that I'll always be grateful for Manny and Shar for their contribution in that sense.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
Up next, we have Tim Raines, Chief Information Security Officer of ADT and a cybersecurity veteran forged in chaos. He joined Microsoft just as massive internet-disrupting worms were hitting the world. High stakes, high urgency, and a career shaped by pressure. It's one of our most gripping hero's journey stories in technology. I'm interested to know what kind of a main learning or takeaway, one of the things that you said, I left this company and brought this with me throughout the rest of my career. Let's start with Microsoft.
Right. Yeah. I spent 17 or 18 years on Microsoft and did a whole bunch of different roles there. But kind of the two loves of my career there were networking and cybersecurity. And so back then, the best cybersecurity folks were networking folks before they became cybersecurity folks, because it turns out like 99% of the attacks happen across a network, right? And so if you can understand TCP/IP, if you understand how the operating systems do networking, you have a pretty good insight into what the attackers are doing, at least from that perspective, right? So that company, Microsoft back in those days, like I joined their incident response team. I was employee number 3 on their incident response team. I think it was 2003. I joined that team on a Thursday, and that Saturday, SQL Slammer hit the internet. And so it was like baptism by fire, right? Slammer, Blaster, MyDoom, Sasser. It just goes on and on and on. All the worms that hit us back in 2003, 2004, before Windows had the firewall turned on by default, it was just one after another. So I started as employee number 3 on that IR team. And before I left, we had 125 people doing IR 24/7. And so what I took from that job, I had the opportunity to develop all the tools that we use to do IR there, like to determine is a Windows system actually compromised or not. And what I took away from that job was a very, very well-developed sense of urgency, right? Like you cannot do this stuff fast enough, right? When a customer calls and says, I need to know if this server's been compromised, that's a big deal. And so being able to do that in a way that's, efficient and really respects the urgency the customer has at that point, like the organization, they really need an answer to that question. So that's what I took away from that job. And it was an incredible experience because the Microsoft has so many smart people there. I still know a million people. I actually live not far away from Microsoft headquarters here in Washington. So
Redmond, right?
yeah, so I still have, plenty of friends that work at the company and so on, but that was an incredible experience. Learning about cybersecurity in the early days, how all the attackers did what they, how do they actually operate? And it turns out that, yes, sure, there's been some novel, things that they've discovered along the way, and they've got some new techniques and tactics, but frankly, I still see the same techniques and tactics I saw back in 2003 being used here in 2025. It's like, old wine in new bottles, right? So it was an incredible experience, though, like that. Just watching attack after attack after attack and learning from attackers was really, really helpful early in my cybersecurity career.
Let's highlight Tara May, CEO of Aspiritech, a leader pushing the conversation around neurodiversity in hiring. Tara built an organization that creates meaningful careers for autistic professionals, inspired in part by her own son. Purpose-driven, vulnerable, and deeply human, this segment always hits home. I've been working with a couple of different people at some of the larger organizations out here, particularly in their technology department, on how do we get neurodiverse people to work? How do we get them supported? How do we enable them and have these programs in place? So my question for you is, because I'm still learning, and so I'm going to ask a curious person that we better
do it.
Do companies usually come to you inbound? Is there a lot of outbound? Is it education? Like, how do you kind of grow the overall base of potential customers with something that's some very unique service, right? And I'm interested to know how that works.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I would say in the beginning, it was a lot of inbound. And what I mean by that is somebody like yourself who has a tie to the mission. There's a passion. There's a reason why you care about neurodiversity and employment. And then as we became really established and really touting the services that we provide more so than the mission even, the outbound sales and marketing strategy increased significantly, right? And so the mission certainly opens doors, right? But it's our proven model and the incredible work of our team members who earn every penny of their paychecks that keeps customers coming back in a services model, right? So I think we went from mission-driven to quality-driven, and the two go really hand in hand together.
I love that. And then what about from the candidate side? How do you engage different parts of the community? How like, do people come to you? Is it at events? Like, how do you get these really talented neurodiverse technology professionals to be part of the organization?
I love that question because it gives me a chance to state what a big problem we have today here in the U.S., which is that the under and unemployment rate for autistic people is often cited at around 80%. That is a lot of people. And it is not because of intelligence or capability or talent. It's it's primarily because of the interview process hurdle, right? Autistic people often struggle with social issues, with eye contact, with new environments. And those are all really critical pieces of interviewing that might not have anything to do with your ability to contribute and a wonderful value set to a workplace, right? So we're all about removing those hurdles and barriers and stigmas and opening up a path for autistic people to share their talents in the workplace.
I love you bringing that up. That is such an interesting insight there. I was talking recently, I might even posted about it recently on that, with how somebody shows up in the interview a lot of times is almost never indicative of what kind of professional they're going to be. And the example I was using was, when people interview with me, a lot of times they see CEO, they see founder, and sometimes they're nervous, right? And I've had to train myself to look beyond things that would be typical with nervousness to try to see the individual. In fact, what I try to do, try to create an environment where they feel more comfortable, right? And so I can only imagine for somebody autistic and neurodiverse, right? They don't have a lot of the same social cues that we learn and that comes with, our growth, right? And that doesn't mean that they can't be really excellent at the job, many times more excellent than somebody that has some of those more, traditional kind of like social awareness skills. And so I think that's a really great call out. And finally, Mario Filippini, a powerhouse with roots in HSBC and Univision, who went on to build a pro rugby team in Miami and launched Gen FC. Entrepreneurship, global partnerships, and a bet on yourself mentality fuel this conversation. With the World Cup on the horizon, this story couldn't be more timely. So let's talk about the World Cup because it's coming to the U.S. next year. What do you anticipate both in terms of the event management and the results on the field for the U.S. team?
So with regards to, it's going to be a very different World Cup than this is the largest World Cup in the sense that the most national teams that are playing. That this is the first edition with more teams than before and with a bigger geography. So it's Mexico, US, and Canada. So I think it's going to be a little bit different. It used to be more concentrated in one place, and I think it's going to be it's different in that sense. But I think the US has learned from past experiences. Copa America happened here a year ago, a little bit more.
Yep.
And
I remember
went that
seeing like
well.
Colombian fans and the Brazilian fans and like people just going absolutely crazy for the Copa America.
Copa America happened here. Also, the World Cup of Clubs happened here. So there was several experiences before in the coordination of the event. So I think this time should be the best out of the of everything come together at one place. I do think there were some things to improve, specifically in the Copa America edition, the first one. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna go well. I think the infrastructure is amazing. It's probably the best country or the best countries with the infrastructure for soccer now, and they have some time and experience to work it out. So I'm looking forward to it.
Love that.
Hopefully, I'm praying for Argentina to play here in Miami. I would love to do so.
I mean, I've been thinking for years now that I definitely need to go see because I really love cheering on the U.S. team. But it sounds like the tickets are just like impossible to get, and it's going to be quite an expensive endeavor to be able to go. So we'll see. I'm going to see if I can pull some strings and get invited to either a game in Miami or Orlando, or I don't know if I have to travel to Dallas. Let's figure it out. Let's see what we can do. You can't miss this. So let's talk a little bit about talent because it's something that throughout your career you've been in large corporate environments. You've been in banking. You started Miami Sharks and a rugby team. So you've been assessing talent along so many different levels for a long time. I'm interested, and let's look at the correlation maybe from like players on the pitch to, people that you bring into your team. What's maybe a core hiring philosophy you have that stretches across both of those components?
I think if I had to define what I look for when hiring is for that candidate to be a team player in the sense in order to be a team player you need to have certain level of humbleness, of humility, and at the same time to be able to understand and have empathy with the other persons. I'm not super interested in folks that are incredibly good at what they do but are not team players at all. That's one of the things that I take a look at. The second piece that I think it's super, super important is for candidates to really want to improve on a constant basis. Look, you can figure out if someone is constantly trying to make things better and has shown throughout their career they are trying to change, to improve, and that's definitely not that easy to find. So that's a second quality that I think you need in a winning team.
Huge thanks to every guest who joined us this year and to you for listening, thinking, and growing with us. If any of these moments spark something, share the episode, drop your thoughts, and keep the conversation going. We'll be back with more stories, more ideas, and more takes on talent in 2026. See you in the next one.